Hello.
Epic Understanding conversation. Hello, Tony. Hello, Erica. Hello, George. Hello, Lusic. It's good to have you here again and to talk again with about Epic Understanding, about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's the third part of this conversation, and I think it's good to talk about this. And thank you for being here. And I'm going to send the word to this way to Erica. It's to you, Erica. Thank you.
All right, so welcome everyone. I am your host, Erica Atkins, Coach Love, with another episode of Epic Understanding. And we are finishing our third series, our three-part series, actually on diversity, equity, and inclusion done right. Obviously, the world itself is having some growing pains, and it's showing up in particular areas, particularly in the workplace. So today I have for you Mr. Tony Alexander, diversity, equity, and inclusion expert. I have for you Ms. Lusic Gaspayan. She is a diversity, equity, and inclusion activist. That is she is all about
practitioner and activist.
Yes, practitioner and activist. And I also have for you today George Leno. Now he's the vice president of human resources at Volunteers of America Chesapeake. And so he is going to bring us a really bright and fresh perspective. He deals with these issues with diversity, equity, and inclusion on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, we're going to put George on the spot, guys, because if you remember, we left off, one of the questions in our last episode was, if diversity, equity, and inclusion should be a part of human resources. George, what say you?
Ooh, okay. You come right out punching. I love it.
Yeah.
I think we've had our so my name is George Leno, the Vice President of Human Resources and Administration for Volunteers of America, Chesapeake and Carolinas. We are one of 33 affiliates of the National Volunteers of America. What be interesting to know is that people don't know for sure that Volunteers of America is actually a Christian church without walls. So sometimes people look at the name and they think it's about volunteers. It really isn't. It is a religious-based human services organization that caters to those in need, and we are located in 33 different states nationwide. Our diversity, equity, and inclusion practice is one of many affiliates that are adopting it within their own organizations, as each affiliate has its own board and its own leadership. So it doesn't all boil up into one organization. It's like many different organizations, but we have our parent organization that kind of like feeds into it. So I just wanted to put that point of clarification as I'm answering this question.
Okay.
Each affiliate handles diversity, equity, and inclusion differently. So for our affiliate, I handle Vice President of Human Resources Administration. I oversee technology, human resources, and organizational development. The discussion has been, where does diversity sit? Does diversity sit in HR and becomes a part of the HR components as it relates to recruitment efforts, affirmative action, EEOC? Does it sit in organizational development where it becomes a part of the culture and enhancing the culture of diversity and the culture of inclusion? Or is it an overarching by itself where its own unit kind of like feeds into the many different aspects of the organization when it relates to culture, HR, finance, support units, programs, and services? So for us, those are the questions that we're looking at. Right now, where it sits as a part of HR, but it's treated separate in as far as it relates to our organizational excellence unit, because it does tie into the way that we care for our individuals, the way we care for our staff, employee engagement, how we respond to the people that we serve, and understanding their cultural differences, their social economic differences, as well as their racial ethnicities and how they practice. So it's a kind of 50-50 split, depending upon what the issues are and how we are tying them to the overall organizational strategic plan. So bottom line, it's in both areas. But even further, it's embedded in our culture. So it has a strong place in our organizational excellence as it relates to our development of our organization. It is a foundational component. It is not a program that HR manages, but it's a culture enhancer. So it sits at the growth of the organization.
Okay, so that is a fantastic answer, but still, we didn't necessarily get a yes or a no. Like, where does it belong? Okay, I'm not going to nail you down too much because I believe the answer might be it depends on the organization. You know, with your organization, you all have folded it within the essence of the culture. So it is within the bones, structure, and lifeblood of the organization. So therefore, it is throughout the organization. So it is part of every department, period, end of story.
Correct.
However, exactly. So, but when that is not the case, when that is not the case and your organization is struggling on outcomes, you might need to think differently. Now, this particular episode, part 3, is all about self-empowerment. The fact of the matter is, if you don't happen to be a part of an organization where diversity, equity, and inclusion is a part of the bare bones of the organization, you are going to have to do things differently, and you are going to have to think differently. Marco, I'd actually like to go ahead and put up this video so we can get a thought process of, you know, HR and how it kind of operates sometimes not in the way that we would prefer as employees. So let's take a look at this.
Hi, I'm Tara, not the HR lady. And I've been complicit. I have done things I regret on behalf of my company. I have swept stuff under the rug because I was asked to. I've kept my head down because of fear. I've been complicit to injustices in the workplace, and I'm admitting it to you. Have you? The key is to stop. Stop doing it. Say no. HR was largely invented to keep companies out of trouble, to mitigate risk, and it is still that to some degree. I've written about that before. What HR isn't is a place to house all of your naughty company secrets and expect that we're just going to comply and keep them. Sorry. Never will I ever sacrifice my integrity to placate a company, a CEO, an executive that's engaging in bad behavior and help their problems go away. And listen, stop asking us to do it. You put us in a really weird position. We are not Ray Donovan. If you wake up with a dead prostitute in your bed, metaphorically, don't call HR and expect us to bail you out, to somehow ensure that this doesn't go anywhere. We still have to look at you every single day and think, fuck, I saved this asshole from a dead prostitute instead. What am I doing with my life? That's not the kind of fixer we are. You don't pay us enough, frankly. Until next time, I'm Tara, not the HRlady.com. Follow us, won't you? Bye.
Want more? Go to now.
Right on the head, nail on the head, getting to the bottom line of what we are discussing. So, wait a minute. Did George cross his arms?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Look, he is not here for it. Okay, we're gonna come back to that. Lucid. Help us tease this out. What are your thoughts on this matter?
Well, a lot of thoughts. First, just giving shout out to not the HR lady. She's a dear friend. And I loved it. I saw the video yesterday and it perfectly addressed a big concern about HR, which is HR, yes, it has human resources in the title, but at the end of the day, if something goes wrong, HR is there to protect the company. And doesn't matter how you look at it, if something goes wrong legally, HR is going to be there to protect the company. And what is wonderful about the video is she's addressing to like what level some companies expect HR to go to, and what can HR itself do with complicity. So yeah, from my perspective, that is something that I always keep in mind, and that's the distinction between HR and a DEI role, and why I think DEI role should not be in the same department as HR is because they have completely different values in a way. Well, not values, I would say. They have completely different people that they report to. One reports to the company, and I would hope that diversity, equity, inclusion person reports to everybody because their job is for diversity, equity, inclusion of everybody. So that's where I see that conflict between HR and diversity, equity, inclusion role in the department. And of course, as George says, you want diversity, equity, inclusion to be within in every single department, but you also want someone to kind of have a handle on the situation and make sure that that's being taken care of, especially when it comes to human resources having so much power and still having to report back to the company and having to protect the company. It's just such an unfortunate position that we put human resource representatives in. Erica, you're muted.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lucic. You made some excellent points there, and basically gave us the conflict in between human resources and diversity, equity, and inclusion, because one is responsible for the corporation, and the other one is responsible for the people of the corporation. Mm-hmm. And that's every single person there. So Tony, let's just take us where we need to go. The bottom line is sometimes you're not going to be in a company that has a proper representation when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what are some strategic steps? What are some tasks? What are some tactics that a person can use in order to make their career go forward?
Well, the first thing, or definitely that I want to say is that first we have to realize we're all humans, right? And that we have to walk into the situation with an open mind. And I definitely don't want people to take this the wrong way, saying, hey, open mind, we have to forget about the 100 years or so of discrimination and the things of the past. But when you're trying to put yourself in a position and roll out tactics, or you try to really push the envelope on diversity and inclusion, then you have to create a clean slate, and you have to make sure that everyone knows that this is about everyone being treated fairly and equal. And so once you can get that process done, you then kind of remove the focus around the protected class and begin to bring in everyone. So once the organization can see, okay, so everyone is being treated fairly and equally. So it's not just because the color of my skin, it's not because of my ethnicity, it's not because I'm a female, because I'm a male, it's because it's the right thing to do. And so we have to understand, as humans, we're going to make mistakes, but we definitely can't keep making the same mistakes over and over. We've scratched this surface, so definitely now is the time not only just to raise our argument, but to raise our voice and to put things into action. A couple of things that I definitely would recommend is being very strategic in how you represent diversity, not only internally to your internal customers, but how you represent it to your external customers. And when I mean just go in very vigorously and making sure that literature that you circulate around your organization, make sure that it's very diverse, that it is representing. I mean, not only to the point where, you know, it's Black History Month and we're going to put up a nice display somewhere in the break room or something like that. You know, let's make Black History Month 365 days a year. So let's talk. Let's keep that conversation going in general, and those are something that ERG groups can do. And speaking of that, companies need to step up and foot the bill for these groups if they really want to see movement in that. So getting these groups of people together and talking to senior level management in order to get these types of things done as well. One of the other things that I truly love and I always recommend is conduct a resume analysis survey. And what that is getting with your human resource department, getting with your DE&I department, and being able to see, because first we have to understand there's already a bias when that resume lands on the desk, and you're automatically categorized as male, female, Black, white, whatever the case may be, just based on your name, right? And so so now you already have that bias, and you don't know if your resume is going in file 13 or if it's going there. So I always suggest you know, third-party auditors on that, and that's something that you can suggest for that, and say, hey, let's look at the amount of resumes that were actually submitted, and let's look at it and rank them by gender. Let's rank them by race, and then in addition, let's look at who was hired. Like, so, you know, what were the qualifications? What are the different qualifications between the 15 candidates that we threw in file 13, which we can't do because of law, so we should be filing those away. So I have to do that disclosure. And then make an argument about it, what you're going to find, because you'll be very surprised at the things that you truly find. And I don't even call that unconscious bias. That's just bias flat out and open. You know, and in addition to that, you know, support projects that actually portray the positive images of diversity in your organization. So whether that's, you know, busting stigmas around, you know, LGBTQ, women in the workplace, and don't just circulate it. I mean, make it like a living and breathing document within your organization, because if you're doing it internally, it's not going to really help, because you need that external factor as well, because you want to be able to draw more people. So whether you're advertising, diversity needs to be in your ads. Whether you're out in the community, diversity needs to be in your boardroom. So just strategic tactics, and don't be afraid to ask why. So if you're in an organization and you don't see people around that look like you, ask why. All right, because we talk about human resources, and which is the truth. They're there for the company. But if you bring up that question to HR, well, why aren't there a lot of women in XYZ positions? Well, guess what? The first flag, and you know, being an HR practitioner and DE&I analyst, the first thing I'm going to say, we got trouble, right? And you know, and that's why I love Not the HR Lady, because unfortunately, that's kind of what made me leave corporate America, because I was the standing lone wolf for a very, very, very long time, and I pushed on these issues. And you know, with everything with 2020 that happened, like my blessing is just seeing people actually start to wake up. And I won't say people are fully woke, but just the fact that they're starting to wake up. And I'm like, wow, you know, what if I was back in corporate America still with these same things? But I also sit back and I reflect, and I say, I just wonder what they're saying now. What if we had just listened then? We wouldn't be in this situation. So again, diversity, look at it from a disability standpoint, and then go to supporting those events that are actually supporting it. You know, you find people, you have, you know, pride parades, you know, you have all different types of events. Have your company represented in there, not like a token, because one of the things that we're going to talk about, you know, or I'll mention real quick, diversity gone wrong, is definitely Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And I think everyone possibly heard about that.
Yeah.
So you know, that's a token, right? That's not taking the time to do the research. So make sure when you're circulating these things and you're doing these initiatives that you have that solid person, and you are empowered. You know, be passionate, be stubborn in your approach and your methods, but be flexible as always with an open mind. So those are just a few. I have a toolbox full of things, but I know we have only a short amount of time, but I could talk about this all day. But I think as an individual, it's up to you. It's like being the long nut. And if you're the long nut for so long, eventually you'll gather followers and momentum will take off.
Okay, very, very nice. And I'm so happy you went there, because I was so going to go there. Because for me, when I was listening to you speak, Tony, this is what I heard it from a particular perspective. And it was what to do when you're the token in the room. That's just what I heard. That is what I heard. You know, don't be the empowered token. Make being a token a tool. And I know that sounds very funny, but sometimes and frequently you are the only woman. You are the only person of color. You are only the person from the LGBT community. Q community. You are that person. And so, George, I want to know, what have you seen executed, specific tasks that you have seen executed from individuals that may have been absorbed within the bones of your organization or any organization that you've been connected to in a successful way?
So first of all, I want to thank Tony for sharing his perspective. I can understand that there have been many times in some organizations that I've been in that I pretty much checked all the boxes and I'm the token in the room. So I get it. But also I agree with Lucette regarding her perspective on it's a human component. It should be divided. It should be separated. So what are some of the things I've seen? I've seen very well executed affirmative action programs. I've seen those come into play and people using the data from the affirmative action program to modify, improve, or pursue the standards so that they can actually hire more people with disabilities or veteran statuses or women, minorities, and things of that nature regarding the roles. I saw people really execute strong EEOC models where they do a lot of advancement and career movement. They establish things like performance management programs or management development programs or what we call emerging leaders, so that people can be prepared to take the next level or the next role. Those are great retention tools for folks so that they can stay with the organization and continue to grow. We happen to be in a time where, outside of COVID, but we happen to be in a time just before COVID where the average stay of an employee was probably about 3 to 4 years. And they were moving on to something else. And if you were a minority person, you probably had a shorter span of maybe 2 or 3 somewhere in there because you were looking to grow quickly because you probably was not going to have that capacity in your current organization. So you jump to an organization, you learn something, and then you move on to another one, you learn something, and you move on. In the spirit of COVID and the state of the nation, it's actually reversed itself. People are staying longer. And there is this need, recognition for minorities and people of color and women to be recognized in their organizations and given more opportunities. So I've also seen where compensation policies have changed to talk about compensating people where there are gaps in leadership and people are stepping up, that the pay equity gets distributed a little bit better. The treatment of whether you're a female or male, it's not the issue. the capacity to handle the role becomes the issue, and that's what you get compensated for. Titles and linear and succession planning and career laddering has become another successful thing that people have been moving through. So I've seen a lot of them. Regionally, what I've also seen too is a strong effort to attract people who speak a different language of different cultures. So, for example, you look at me, I am a Black man, but I'm a Black man of Hispanic descent. So I also speak Spanish and I speak French, and I have no problems acknowledging my LGBTQ participation. So, and I'm over 40, so I hit all the check boxes. So I get it, But at the same time, I pursue other people like me in the organization so that there's a community that gets developed because they see others like themselves. And when you're at the very top, people always want to look at the very top and see themselves reflected in the mirror at those who are in senior leadership and the board chair and things of that nature. The last thing I want to consider is how well boards adopt their DEI initiatives at the board level. And I've seen a few organizations do that very well. My organization in question is doing that very well, from my opinion. But, Tony could probably look at it from the outside in and say, hey, you could do this a little bit better. Hey, and I'm going to leave that out there because it's not about seeking perfection, but it's always about getting better, right? Because when we seek perfection, we will always fall short. We will always fall short because the only person that's perfect is God, and God is not in this world, but He is in our So we need to remember that perfection is never obtainable. Its only ability to be better is what's attainable. And as long as we do better tomorrow than we did today, then we're good. So my board has taken the initiative to really pursue a very strong DEI perspective in its structure and making sure that it's meeting those expectations as well. Do I believe in the HR lady and her model about what she talks about?
I knew we were going to get some. Come on, George.
I think when you take on this job, you are, your first and primary role is to manage the risk of the organization. That is at the end of it. And to Tony's point, somebody walks in my office and they talk about how come we don't see this? How come? Yes, that is a red flag. And I need to be prepared because I don't want to deal with EEOC complaints. I don't want to deal with lawsuits because that sucks up the resources. So HR doesn't need to cover up anything. HR needs to make sure that there are processes and practices and investigatory methods to unveil things so that they can be addressed. It's not to hide it or to put your dirty laundry in my department so I can handle it, but it's more so if it's here, let's uncover it and bring light to it so that we can fix the problem instead of putting it underneath the cover. And so in that vein, where she talks about, I don't personally follow that philosophy. That is not my philosophy about hiding things. My philosophy is, how do I manage the risk of the organization? Who needs to know? How do we put this forward? And how do we address the issue? Because organizations that are not transparent with their problems, they're the ones that are finding themselves in lawsuits and things of that nature. Organizations that don't speak about their issues and don't talk about their shortcomings and don't really put forward where the challenges are, they're the ones that are constantly getting hit in the head with how come you're not addressing these issues. And so I'm very proud of my organization and my leadership team and my executive senior leadership team for always putting forward, let's address the issue, let's not hide it. Because when you hide it, that becomes a bigger problem. And then you got to do more cleanup. So that's how I feel about the HR lady. I may go on and check her out and see a little bit more about what she's saying. Because she's friends with Lucy, I do want to see what she's trying to say. But I'm like, Tony, don't come in my office unless you're ready to fix the problem. Okay.
There we go. But you want to know what, George? Your organization is HR done right. So you're doing it right. But the fact of the matter is there are so many who are doing it wrong.